Hello, I'm Jeremy Stout from the Nature Center at Steel Creek Park. With more of us getting outside right now, and that's a great thing, I thought this would be a great time to learn about an oftentimes misunderstood plant that many of us know by fear or by its bad reputation better than we know the plant itself, and that is what's right behind me here. No, I'm not talking about the big oak tree, I'm talking about what's growing on it. Of course, this is poison ivy. The scientific name is toxicodendron, which literally translated means toxic tree. This is one of the most poisonous plants that occurs in our area. But like I said, there's a lot of misinformation about what this plant is and is not. So there are a few different members of this toxicodendron group. They're all related to the sumacs, which is a fairly common group of trees and woody plants that occur in our area. It's important to note though, while there is something called poison sumac, which is incredibly poisonous to the touch, we actually don't have any records of it in Sullivan County or most of East Tennessee, in fact. It is known from Tennessee, but Greene County is the closest official record of poison sumac. So that leaves the other two poisonous plants, poison ivy, and then what's oftentimes referred to as poison oak. And the truth is that poison ivy and poison oak are so much alike that I'm not even sure I trust my own identification to tell which is which. In fact, when I used to give talks on poison ivy 20 years ago, poison oak wasn't even recognized as an official species then. So poison oak and poison ivy are closely related. The authors now suggest that they are different species. Both of them occur here in this area, and they're awfully similar. So how do you tell poison ivy or poison oak? Well, for one thing, it will have compound leaves in leaves of three. We know that, we've all learned the poem, leaves of three, leave them be. The trouble with that is that there's a lot of plants that have leaves oriented in compound leaves of three. So the clovers that are around me are three-leaved. Cultivated strawberries, those are three-leaved. Of course, those aren't poisonous to the touch. What also makes identification even more difficult is that poison ivy has a whole bunch of different growth forms. Right here you see poison ivy growing as a vine, going up the side of the tree. It can also be a vine that trails on the ground. It can also be a woody shrub or even a small tree that's just growing erect from the ground with a trunk. So it's incredibly variable. The leaves also, you notice that some of these leaves are light green, some of them are dark green. Some of the leaves are glossy on their tops. Some of them are matte in color. Some of them are round and plain. Some of them have toothy edges. Some of them are pointy on the end. Some of them are round on the end. It is an incredibly variable plant. The thing that you can count on though is that however you find it, it will have the clusters of three leaflets, and usually the inside of that cluster of three leaflets will have a reddish or brownish spot right in the middle where the three leaves emanate from. So that's one way you can tell it apart. Another way you can tell it, and this is especially good for identifying the plant when it doesn't have its leaves, is by the vines themselves. Poison ivy vines actually have what looks like fur coming off the side of them. And sometimes those vines can get great big around. You might have noticed that. You're walking out in the woods and you see a big fat vine as big around as a grapefruit. Looks like a woolly worm caterpillar snaking up the side of a tree. That vine is almost certainly poison ivy. So it's important that you learn how to identify poison ivy in all of its different growth forms. Because it's not just the leaves of the plant that are poisonous. All parts of the plant are poisonous. The roots, the stems, the leaves, the berries, the flowers, all parts of poison ivy are poisonous. So what that means is, even though poison ivy is deciduous, it loses its leaves in the fall and doesn't get them back until the spring. When is it poisonous? all year round. So it's incredibly important that to keep yourself safe while you're outdoors, learn how to identify poison oak and poison ivy in our area. Well, now I know what some of you at home might be thinking. You might be thinking, Jeremy, you're right outside the Nature Center and here I am showing this incredibly dangerous plant. You might be thinking, why haven't I gotten rid of this poisonous plant? Well, the reason is simple. Poison ivy actually has some benefits. Not really to people, it's all poisonous, but poison ivy is a native plant that actually belongs here. And while the berries of poison ivy could be deadly poisonous to us humans, birds and lots of other wildlife are able to eat those berries. And they get a lot of nutrition from it, especially at times of the year when their other food sources aren't available. A lot of insect-eating birds are able to feast on poison ivy birds and stay alive past the cold points in the year when they can't find insects to eat. It's oftentimes poison ivy berries that keep them alive. So remember that just because something is dangerous to us, that doesn't make it bad. And that doesn't mean that we should go out and get rid of all of it wherever we find. Best thing we can do is just educate ourselves and learn to stay away from it.